You all, and welcome back for Chapter 10, Recruiting Children. Decisions related to enrolling and grouping children are complex, as many factors related to the needs of children and families, as well as the quality of the program, must be considered. Of course, there are also pressures to admit all applicants when enrollment is not full. However, it is important for the director to exercise good professional judgment and base admission decisions on what is in the best interest of the children and their families. Ultimately, the director is responsible for the decisions about how children will be admitted to the program and how they will be grouped. The teachers may be called upon to assist in these decisions, and sometimes a standing committee authorized by the board is asked to make policy or give advice. An admissions and recruitment committee might be charged with the policy-making decisions about the population of the program and how it's designed to serve, as well as the procedures that should be followed when you are enrolling students. Decisions must also be made about how children will be grouped and how the programs can support children with disabilities. We do have a federal law in place that's called ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act. And it was enacted in 1990 and then amended in 2008. Knowledge of the ADA is important as directors review requests for admissions of children with disabilities. Centers are prohibited from denying admission to a child simply because they have a disability. However, if the admission of the child would fundamentally alter the nature of the program, then they don't have to enroll the student. Okay, so likewise, children who pose a direct threat or to the health and safety of others do not have to be admitted into a program. So a lot of times people hear ADA and that it was for children who keeps you from denying admissions for children simply on the sole basis of having a disability. They just naturally assume that mandates that all children with disabilities must be admitted to a center, and that is not true. If in fact it would fundamentally alter the program, or if those children would be deemed a threat to the health and safety of the center and of the others within the program, then they don't have to be admitted. Okay, so that's something just to kind of keep in mind as you're going through. Decisions, once children are admitted, and in decisions about grouping children, the group, the size, the ages of children, the composition of the group, all must be reached before making the group assignments and pursuing all the subsequent steps in the enrollment procedure. So you got to make decisions about the group size, the ages of the children, how you're going to put them all together, but long before you decide if you're going to admit them, because ultimately it's kind of like up to, do you have the space and that kind of thing to be able to accommodate them. Okay, let's talk about the needs of children and group size for a second. The needs of children will vary depending on their experiences, their level of development in all areas, and their ages. However, it is generally agreed that very young children in their first group experience find it most satisfying to relate to a constant adult. So ultimately what that means is that they need to be in a classroom where the person, the teacher, the caregiver, there's not a constant turnover, or there's not one teacher one day and then another teacher the next day, okay, like that. Young children, especially in their first group experience, they are going to do much better in the setting when the teacher is a constant, okay, and they can find someone that they can attach to, that one constant person, not many people throughout the day or throughout the weeks. let's talk about just discussion of children, their enrollment, records, any kind of confidential information. Of course, you should not be disclosing any of that. And a lot of times during the admissions process, you're going to uncover some confidential, personal type of information. However, remember that as soon as you betray the trust of the parent, and that trust is broken between the teacher, the facility, and the parent, then you kind of damage that trust, and they may choose not to enroll their child there at all. So make sure that you hold all that personal information and all the records. You follow that FERPA, and you do not divulge any confidential information. Once you have children placed into your center and you're recruiting these children, creating a really intimate home-like classroom environment can really soften the institutional type atmosphere that prevails in many large centers. So you really want to make your classroom, your foyer area, the first thing when they walk into the classroom, from a recruiting standpoint and enrolling children, you want to really make it really home-like and inviting so that the children want to come. Regardless, now here's the thing to remember, regardless if you are high quality, you check all the boxes, okay? Like your center checks all the boxes and you do all the things right, all of that is not going to eliminate the fact that some children are going to still be apprehensive about coming to school, okay? So even though you've checked off all those boxes, that's not going to necessarily eliminate that. Peer learning, working together, placing children in groups, really has an intrinsic value because it facilitates and encourages cooperation and appreciation for others for who differ in developmental levels. So I think it's a good thing to group those children together to work in those groups. Now, not necessarily that the teacher would be dealing with this, but more so when you become a director or if you're on a committee that serves in this capacity, you must make sure that you have all the information in signed releases that are required to satisfy government regulations, okay? Now, we're not necessarily going to know, do we have all the things, okay? Especially when it comes to government regulations and liability, with you being held liable for something. So a director has got to make sure that before they have an enrollment procedure or that relates to information and signed releases so that the center is covered as far as meeting government regulations and those liability, you're going to have to discuss it with someone who is, that's their thing, okay? Like they are versed and well versed in that area. And so you're going to need to talk to an attorney. The director is going to have to meet with the attorney and make sure that you have all your I's dotted and all your T's crossed, and also a local licensing agent. And so if you're in the state of Alabama, and since any facility that's DHR mandated, that comes, is mandated through DHR as a licensed facility, then they will have a local licensing agent that should also be able to go back in and check and make sure that you have all of those things. Now, when a child is going to make their initial visit into a new classroom, they really need to be accompanied. So let's say maybe they're leaving, they've aged out of your 2-year-old classroom and now they're going to move into your 3-year-old classroom in your center. They need to be accompanied when they go and make that initial classroom visit for just and like in a phase in type thing. So we're going to have them go and visit the 3-year-old classroom, but they're not going to stay there all day. So maybe they're just going to come for circle time, and then they may just come for centers as we begin to phase them in. But always, in order to make the transition smooth, they need to be accompanied by a trusted caregiver who stays in the classroom with them during that initial visit. So that should help you with the objectives that are presented in chapter 10. Don't forget to visit your Blackboard course. Make sure that you complete the assignment and the quiz, and if there's a possible discussion that goes along with this. If you have any questions, of course, don't hesitate to message me, and I'll see you next week.